The Spider of Manhattanth Whiz 1953-1991. The enigma behind every great crime. There is a mastermind. But Jeffrey Epstein was different. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a system, a mechanism designed to entrap the world's most powerful men presidents, princes, and scientists within his web. Today, the world knows about the Island of Sin and the Lolita Express, but few stop to ask, where did it all begin? How did a college dropout, born in a cramped house in Coney Island, become the owner of New York's largest private mansion? Where did that first $1 million come from? The terrifying truth is that Jeffrey Epstein didn't earn his money. He stole it, but not from banks or vaults. He stole it from the hearts and minds of the elite. This story begins not when he was a monster, but when he was simply a teacher, the prodigy of Brooklyn 1953 to 1974. On January 20th, 1953, a boy was born in the working-class neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. His parents named him Jeffrey Edward Epstein. His childhood was unremarkable, perhaps too unremarkable. His father, Seymour Epstein, was a groundskeeper for the NYC Parks Department. Money was tight, but Jeffrey possessed something far more valuable than gold, a calculator for a brain. His teachers were baffled. The boy was a genius in mathematics and piano. He could solve complex equations in the air. By 16, he had graduated from Lafayette High School and attended Cooper Union. But then, the first crack in the facade appeared. Despite his brilliance, he failed college. He studied physics, then math, but never completed a degree. By 1974, he was a college dropout, no job, no future. To the outside world, he was a failure. But Epstein had learned a crucial lesson early. The world doesn't run on degrees. It runs on confidence. The mystery of Dalton School 1974-1976, September 1974. Enter the Dalton School, the most prestigious, exclusive preparatory school in New York City. Getting admission here was nearly impossible. Getting a job here was even harder. This was the playground for the children of the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, and global politicians. It remains one of the great mysteries of his life. How did 21-year-old Jeffrey Epstein, a dropout with no credentials, get hired as a physics and math teacher for the elite? The man who hired him was Headmaster Donald Barr. Remember this name. Donald Barr's son, Bill Barr, would later become the U.S. Attorney General, the very man overseeing the Justice Department. When Epstein died in his jail cell in 2019, coincidence? You decide. At Dalton, Epstein played the game that would become his trademark. He taught the children, yes, but his real targets were their parents. He would show up to parent-teacher conferences in sharp suits, charming the mothers and impressing the fathers. He would tell them, your child is a genius. They just need the right direction. He realized a fundamental truth. The rich are the loneliest people on earth, and they love being told they are special. It was here he met Alan Ace Greenberg, the chairman of Bear Stearns, then one of Wall Street's biggest investment banks. Ace's daughter was a student at Dalton. Ace saw something in Jeffrey. He told him, son, you are wasting your time in a classroom. You have a salesman hidden inside you. Come to Wall Street. That is where we play with numbers for real. In 1976, Epstein left Dalton. He put down the chalk and picked up a briefcase. The Wolf of Wall Street, 1976 to 1981, from the moment he stepped into Bear Stearns. Epstein caused havoc. He entered as a junior assistant. But within just 4 years, by 1980, he was named a limited partner. This was unheard of. Men spent 20 years trying to reach that level. How did he do it? He became an options trader, managing money for the Maharajas of wealth. He developed his golden strategy, mystery. He never told anyone exactly where the money was invested. Exclusivity. He only accepted clients who invested $1 million or more. Blackmail potential. It is whispered that even then, he began cataloging the weaknesses of his clients. But in 1981, he was suddenly fired. The official reason: Reg D violation. He had illegally invested his own money alongside clients. For a normal man, this would be a career death sentence. Word spread on Wall Street that Epstein was a fraud. But Epstein? He just smiled. He told a friend, "I will never work for anyone again. Now, the world works for me." He founded his own firm, J. Epstein and Company. People laughed. Who would trust this fired trader? But soon, the world would see that Epstein had caught the biggest whale of them all. The Tower Financial Scandal, 1987 here. The story takes a dark twist. In 1987, Epstein began working with Stephen Hoffenberg, the owner of Tower Financial. Together, they orchestrated one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, defrauding investors of $450 million. When the FBI and SEC raided them, the house of cards collapsed. Stephen Hoffenberg was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But Jeffrey Epstein? He walked away scot-free. His name wasn't even in the indictment. Years later, from his prison cell, Hoffenberg said in an interview, "Jeffrey Epstein is the devil's brother. We stole that money together, but he shifted all the blame onto me and walked away with the cash." This was the first concrete proof that Epstein had invisible protection, be it intelligence agencies or dark money that shielded him from the law. By 1993, he was officially untouchable. The masterpiece, Leslie Wexner 1989-1991, to understand Epstein's sudden billions. You must know one name, Leslie Wexner. Wexner was the retail king of America, the billionaire owner of Victoria's Secret and the Limited. He lived in Ohio, far away from the grit of New York. But Epstein found him. Epstein convinced Wexner that his lawyers and accountants were robbing him. He told him, "Give me the power. I will save your empire." And then, the world witnessed something that defies logic to this day. In 1991, Leslie Wexner signed over power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein. This meant Epstein had total legal control over Wexner's billions, his properties, his investments, and his life. Using this power, Epstein acquired a property in Manhattan. Address 9 East 71st Street. This was no ordinary house. It was the largest private residence in New York City. 7 floors, heated sidewalks so the snow would melt automatically, and gold-plated doors. The house belonged to Wexner, but by 2011, it was fully transferred to Epstein. The price, $0. Paperwork suggests it was a gift. People asked, why? Why would a self-made billionaire give a palace to his money manager? There is only one logical answer: blackmail. Rumors swirled that Epstein possessed tapes or documents so damaging that Wexner had no choice but to pay the ransom. Conclusion of Chapter 1 by 1995. Jeffrey Epstein was no longer just a teacher. He wasn't even just a financier. He was the king of mystery. In his 7-story palace, the world's elite began to gather. Nobel Prize-winning scientists, powerful politicians, and Hollywood stars sipped champagne in his parlor. He branded himself a science philanthropist, donating millions to Harvard. But behind the glamour, a darkness was growing. Epstein realized that money wasn't enough. To truly control the powerful, he needed something they couldn't buy. He needed something to compromise them. He needed flesh. Young, vulnerable, innocent flesh. In late 1991, a woman walked into his life. She had a glint of malice in her eyes and the accent of British aristocracy. Her name was Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the one who would build the system of recruitment. And this marks the beginning of the era where Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Prince Andrew enter the story. The spider of Manhattan had spun his web, and the world's biggest flies were about to walk right into it. The Golden Web, 1991-2005. The perfect match of Jeffrey Epstein was the brain. Then Ghislaine Maxwell was the face that deceived the world. Epstein had money, but it was new money. He was rough around the edges, a college dropout who didn't belong in the polite drawing rooms of aristocracy to access royalty and presidents. He needed to guide someone born into that world. In 1991, fate, or perhaps the devil, brought them together. Part 1. The Lady Following the Entry of Maxwell. November 5, 1991. Canary Islands. A bloated body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean. It belonged to Robert Maxwell, the British media tycoon, billionaire, and alleged Mossad asset. His death remains a mystery to this day. Did he fall from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, or was he pushed? With his death, his favorite daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, was left adrift. Her father was dead, the family fortune was evaporating, and London society had turned its back on her. She fled to New York. There, she met Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein gave her what she desperately needed: money and protection. In return, Ghislaine gave Epstein what he craved: access. She took Epstein by the hand and led him through the most exclusive doors in the world. She introduced him to everyone from Prince Andrew to Bill Clinton. People called them lovers, but they were far more than that. They were partners in crime. The Lolita Express crime in the clouds. Epstein's greatest weapon wasn't a gun. It was a Boeing 727. Its tail number was N908JE. The media and locals later gave it a grim nickname, the Lolita Express. The plane was a flying 5-star hotel, fitted with red velvet carpets, a king-sized bed, and gourmet dining. But the most terrifying thing about this plane isn't the luxury, it is the flight logs. Epstein meticulously recorded the name of every single person who boarded that jet. Why? To remind them later, you were there too. If you look at those logs today, you will find names that shake the world. Kevin Spacey, Hollywood actor; Chris Tucker, comedian; Naomi Campbell, supermodel; Prince Andrew, Duke of York; Bill Clinton, former U.S. president. What were they doing on that plane? Some were just hitching a ride, but others were there for something else. Flight attendants later testified that the plane was often filled with young girls, some appearing to be minors, who were brought along to provide massages. The Clinton connection 2002 Africa. September 2002. Epstein's jet was soaring over Africa. On board were Epstein, Ghislaine, Maxwell, actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker, and the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton. It was billed as a humanitarian trip. The Clinton Foundation was working to fight AIDS and poverty in Africa. But the question remains, why was the most powerful man on earth, Clinton, flying with a known fraudster, Epstein? Clinton later claimed he knew nothing of Epstein's character. Yet, flight logs show that Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's jet at least 26 times. Is it possible that during 26 flights, a former president never noticed the young girls coming and going? Epstein would often brag to friends, "I helped start the Clinton Foundation." This was Epstein's masterstroke, using philanthropy as a shield. When you fund the charity work of the powerful, no one dares to look inside your bedroom. The party buddy, Donald Trump, 1990s to 2004. Whenever Epstein threw parties in New York or Florida, another billionaire was often seen by his side, Donald Trump. The two shared a deep bond in the 90s. They both loved the Playboy lifestyle. In a 2002 interview with New York Magazine, Trump famously said, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." That quote would come back to haunt Trump years later. However, in 2004, their friendship shattered. The cause wasn't a crime, but real estate. A massive mansion in Palm Beach went up for sale, priced at nearly $100 million. Both Trump and Epstein wanted it. Trump outbid Epstein and won the property. After that, Epstein cut Trump out of his circle. Perhaps it was Trump's luckiest day had that friendship continued. He might have gone down with Epstein. The recruitment machine. 1999. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had perfected a pyramid scheme for procuring girls. Their mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, became their hunting ground. How did they trap them? The method was chillingly simple and innocent. Ghislaine Maxwell would visit local high schools or shopping malls. She would spot a simple girl, often one who looked like she came from a struggling family. She would approach her. "Hi, I work for a billionaire. He needs a massage therapist. We will pay you $100 for an hour. It's just a normal massage." In the late 90s, $200 was a fortune for a student. The girl would come to the mansion. Epstein would be there. The first time, everything would be normal. Epstein would pay the cash and say, "If you bring a friend, I will give you an extra $200 commission." It was a trap. Girls started bringing their sisters, cousins, and friends. Slowly, The massage would change. Epstein's demands would increase. The girls were terrified, but by then they were blackmailed. Epstein had videos, or he would threaten them with the police. This system was so robust that for 10 years, no one reported it. Why? Because off-duty police officers were working as security guards outside Epstein's house. The girls believed the police were in Epstein's pocket, and they weren't entirely wrong. The island Little St. James, meanwhile, in 1998, Epstein bought a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Name, Little St. James. Price, $7.95 million. People asked, why an island so far away? Epstein replied, for privacy. But locals watched as strange construction began. Odd structures rose from the ground. There was a building that looked like a temple, topped with a golden dome and adorned with bizarre statues. At night, boats would arrive under the cover of darkness. There were no laws on this island. It was Epstein's sovereign state. This is where he brought his VIP guests. Rumors swirled of underground tunnels. Beneath the complex, the world would only learn the true horror of Epstein Island when it was far too late. Conclusion of Chapter 2. By 2005, Jeffrey Epstein was at the peak of his power. He owned a palace in New York, a mansion in Florida, an apartment in Paris, a ranch in New Mexico, and his own island in the Caribbean. His friends included the President of the United States and the Prince of England. He felt untouchable. But in March 2005, a mistake happened in Florida. The mother of a 14-year-old girl picked up the phone and called the police. She said, "A wealthy man called my daughter for a massage and did terrible things to her." The chief of Palm Beach Police, Michael Reiter, could have ignored the call. Cases involving the rich often disappeared. But Reiter said, "Let's investigate." He didn't know it yet, but he was sticking his hand into a hornet's nest. Epstein's nightmare was about to begin, but the system was preparing to use all its power to save him. The Deal with the Devil 2005. 2000 Justice for Salif. A poor man is caught stealing bread from a grocery store. He faces years in prison. But if a billionaire destroys the lives of dozens of children, the American justice system treats him like a VIP guest. What happened in 2008 was not justice. It was the cover-up of the century. This is the story of how the FBI, U.S. attorneys, and shadowy intelligence agencies conspired to save Jeffrey Epstein. The Raid 2005, Palm Beach, Florida. Police Chief Michael Reiter was taking the biggest risk of his career. Following the phone call from the distressed mother, his team began secret surveillance of Epstein's mansion. They watched in horror as young girls, some in school uniforms, entered the massive gates and didn't emerge for hours. They had probable cause. In October 2005, the police raided Epstein's palace. What they found inside was enough to turn their stomachs. Massage rooms, equipped with hidden cameras. Sex toys, scattered throughout the property. The Black Book, a small, black leather diary containing the private numbers and addresses of over 1,000 of the world's most powerful people. Trump, Clinton, princes, everyone was in there. The photos, images so graphic they couldn't even be shown in open Court, chief writer stated, "We have enough evidence to put this man away for life." They drafted a 53-page indictment. The case was airtight. But then the system stepped in. He belongs to intelligence when the Florida police asked the federal government, FBI, for assistance. Strange things began to happen. The U.S. attorney in charge of the case was Alexander Acosta. Remember this name. Acosta's job was to prosecute Epstein. Instead, he was holding secret backroom meetings with Epstein's high-priced lawyers. Years later, when Alexander Acosta became a cabinet minister under Donald Trump, he gave an interview that shook the world. When asked why he went easy on Epstein, he admitted the terrifying truth. "I was told to back off. I was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence, and that this was above my pay grade." The question remains, which intelligence? CIA, Mossad, MI6? Because Epstein held compromising videos of men like Clinton and Prince Andrew. Intelligence agencies likely viewed him not as a criminal, but as an asset. He was a tool for controlling global leaders. The Sweetheart Deal 2008 in 2008. The world witnessed the most shameful legal decision in modern history. Instead of facing life imprisonment, Epstein was handed a plea bargain that the media later dubbed the Sweetheart Deal. The terms were shocking. Federal investigation ends. The FBI would stop digging. Only 18 months. He would serve less than 2 years. The non-prosecution agreement, the most dangerous clause. The deal stated that not only Epstein, but any potential co-conspirators would be granted total immunity. This meant that Ghislaine, Maxwell, Prince Andrew, and any other wealthy associate involved in the abuse could never be prosecuted. Epstein didn't just save himself. He bought silence for his entire network. The victims were not even informed that a deal had been made. It was a violation of federal law. Jail or vacation? Epstein went to jail, but it was a mockery of punishment. He was housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade. And then came the twist. He was granted work release. This meant that at 8 a.m. every morning, he would change out of his orange jumpsuit, walk out of jail, get into his luxury car, and go to his office. He spent the entire day in his air-conditioned office meeting people and conducting business, and only returned to jail to sleep at night. He hired off-duty police officers to be his private guards. He watched TV in his cell and had gourmet food delivered. After just 13 months, he was a free man. On paper, he was a registered sex offender. In reality, he was still a king. The photo in Central Park 2010 after his release. People assumed Epstein would be a social pariah. Who would be friends with a convicted sex offender? But in 2010, the New York Post published a photograph that stunned the public. Location: Central Park, New York. The photo showed Jeffrey Epstein walking through the snow. Walking right beside him, laughing, was Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. This was after Epstein's conviction. The Queen's son was openly hanging out with a known predator. It was later revealed that Prince Andrew was actually staying at Epstein's New York mansion during that trip. When the BBC later asked Prince Andrew, "Why were you there?" the prince replied, "I went to tell him that I was ending our friendship." It was the most absurd lie ever told. You don't stay in someone's house for days just to break up with them. The comeback from 2011 to 2018. Epstein began rebuilding his web. He used science as his new cover. He began inviting Nobel Prize winners, Stephen Hawking, and MIT professors to his island for conferences. He wanted the world to forget his crimes and see him as an intellectual philanthropist. It was during this era, in 2018, that he wrote the now famous email about Imran Khan. Epstein was obsessed with global politics. He monitored which new leaders were rising. He feared that if anti-corruption leaders or outsiders took power, the system that protected men like him would collapse. But he forgot one thing. Every pharaoh has his fall. And Epstein's time was running out. 2019 was approaching. The collapse November 2018. July 2019 the rope tightens, these say. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. By 2018, Jeffrey Epstein had returned to a life of normalcy. He attended parties, conducted business, and lived in luxury. He believed the sweetheart deal of 2008 was his permanent shield. But he forgot that the world had changed. The #MeToo movement was in full force. Titans like Harvey Weinstein were falling. And in Miami, a reporter sat at her desk, dusting off old files. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to reignite the biggest scandal in American history. The woman who refused to forget Julie K. Brown, an investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, received a tip. Someone told her that 10 years ago, a wealthy pedophile was let off the hook despite a mountain of evidence. Julie thought, I need to find out what the real story was. She did what the FBI and police had failed to do. She tracked down the victims' girls who were now grown women. She listened to their stories. She uncovered how Alexander Acosta, who was now a cabinet minister in the Trump administration, had broken the law to protect Epstein. In November 2018, Julie published her investigative series, Perversion of Justice. The report hit like a bomb. It shook the world. People asked, why is this man walking free? The public outcry was so deafening that federal prosecutors in New York SDNY were forced to reopen the case. Epstein likely thought this was just noise that would fade away. But this time, the beast was out of the cage. The return from Paris, July 6, 2019. July 6, 2019. Evening. Jeffrey Epstein was flying back from Paris, France, on his private jet, the Lolita Express. His arrogance was his downfall. Had he felt even a sliver of fear, he would have stayed in France, a country that does not extradite its citizens to the US. But he believed he was untouchable. The jet touched down at Teterboro Airport, New Jersey. As the door opened, Epstein likely expected his driver to be waiting to take him to Manhattan. Instead, he saw FBI agents. They didn't call him sir. They didn't offer a deal. They slapped handcuffs on his wrists. The charge: sex trafficking of minors. The world's most powerful broker was dragged into a federal car. That night, Epstein did not sleep in his 7-story mansion. He slept in a cold, concrete cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, the safe secrets of the mansion. Immediately after the arrest, FBI agents raided Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. What they found inside proved that Epstein was prepared to flee at a moment's notice. Inside his private safe, they discovered stacks of cash-loose diamonds, a fake passport. The passport had Epstein's photo, but a different name. The address listed was in Saudi Arabia, but the passport itself was Austrian. The question haunts investigators. Why does an American billionaire need a fake foreign passport? Was he an agent for Mossad or another intelligence service? Bail denied Epstein thought this was 2008 all over again. He thought he could throw money at the problem. In court, his lawyers offered a massive package. Your Honor, we are prepared to post a bail of nearly $100 million. Let him stay in his mansion under house arrest with GPS trackers. But Judge Richard Berman had read the files. He had seen the photos found in the raid. The judge looked up and said one word: denied. He declared, "This man is a danger to the community. He stays in jail." The courtroom erupted in quiet relief. Epstein's face went pale. For the first time, he realized his money was nothing but useless paper. Hell on Earth MCC jail. Epstein was housed in the MCC in Lower Manhattan. This is one of the toughest federal jails in America, often housing terrorists and drug lords like El Chapo. It was a far cry from the beaches of Little St. James. He was placed in Unit 9 South, a small, cramped cell, rats and roaches scurrying on the floor. Lights that buzzed 24/7. The screams of other inmates echoing through the halls. Epstein began to break. He was mentally weak. He told his lawyers, "Get me out of here. I'm going to die." But on the outside, silence reigned. Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, no one came to his defense. Everyone was silently praying that Epstein would keep his mouth shut. The warning July 23rd incident, 2 weeks before his death. A strange incident occurred. On the night of July 23rd, 2019, guards found Epstein semi-conscious on the floor of his cell. His face was turning blue, and there were marks on his neck. He was rushed to the hospital and survived. When he woke up, Epstein claimed, "My cellmate tried to kill me." His cellmate at the time was Nicholas Tartaglione, an ex-cop turned quadruple murderer. A massive BODYBUILDER. Tartaglione denied it. "I didn't touch him. He tried to hang himself." Was it a suicide attempt? Or was it a warning? The message seemed clear. If you talk, you won't survive the next time. The jail administration placed Epstein on suicide watch. This meant 24-hour surveillance, paper clothes so he couldn't make a noose, and constant checks. But then, on July 29th, he was inexplicably taken off suicide watch. Why? Who authorized it? This was the fatal error or conspiracy that set the stage for the final act, conclusion, of chapter for August 2019 had begun. Epstein was now alone in cell 15. The world was waiting for the trial of the century. Everyone expected Epstein to stand in court and name names to expose the Clintons, the princes, the billionaires. People believed, finally, justice was coming. But in the shadows, the system had decided that Epstein's voice was too dangerous for the world order. Death was knocking at the door. Dead Men Tell No Tales, August 2019. Present the Silent Seath night of August 9th, 2019. Inside New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center MCC was not like any other night. There was a strange stillness in the air. Jeffrey Epstein, the man who held the secrets of the world's most powerful elites, was alone in cell 15. By law, he should not have been alone. By law, guards should have checked on him every 30 minutes. By law, the cameras should have been rolling. But that night, the law went to sleep. The night of errors, 10:30 p.m., Epstein's cellmate was removed from the cell. The jail administration called it a routine transfer. But this was a massive risk. Epstein had allegedly tried to kill himself just 2 weeks prior. Leaving him alone was effectively handing him over to death. Two guards were on duty, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas. Their job was simple: walk past Epstein's cell every 30 minutes to ensure he was alive. But what did they do? They sat at their desks and slept. They browsed the internet for furniture and motorcycles. They falsified official logs, writing checked when they hadn't moved an inch. The reality is that from 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., not a single soul looked into Epstein's cell. 8 hours of total freedom or death. The camera's blinked jail corridor was lined with cameras pointing directly at the cell door. Later, when the FBI demanded the footage, the response was chilling. The cameras malfunctioned. How is this possible? In America's highest security federal facility, housing terrorists and drug lords, the cameras outside the most high-profile inmate's cell broke on that specific night. Even when one camera's footage was recovered, the file was corrupted. This was no coincidence. It screamed that someone did not want the world to see who, if anyone, entered that cell. 6:30 a.m. The discovery, August 10, 6:30 a.m. The guards finally went to serve breakfast. They called out his name. No answer. When they unlocked the door, they found Jeffrey Epstein hanging from the top bunk bed. He had used a bedsheet as a noose, kneeling forward toward the floor. The guards screamed, "Breathe, Epstein, breathe." But he was cold. The medical team tried to revive him, but at 7 a.m., he was pronounced dead. The official verdict: suicide by hanging. The news spread like wildfire. President Trump tweeted about conspiracies. Across the globe, the phrase #Epstein didn't kill himself began trending. The broken Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, didn't believe the official story. He hired the world's most famous forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden, to observe the autopsy. Dr. Baden saw what the government doctors were trying to downplay. The hyoid bone in Epstein's neck was broken in 3 places. Thank you for staying with us through this dark journey. If you want to see more uncovered truths, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. We will meet again very soon with another story of heroes of history and villains. Until then, take care.